All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I'm joined by my brother, the Gritty Bro Man. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you.
Today's podcast is the second part of my discussion with Ryan Lampers about our New Zealand tar and chamois hunt. Hopefully, folks are really enjoying the films. I'm not sure if part 2 is out yet as of this podcast, because
maybe,
but go check out part 1 for sure, and part 2 is coming if it's not out already. Go to our YouTube channel, you'll see it there. Hopefully you're digging it. It was a pretty awesome hunt. We put a lot of work into the video production, hoping that you'll love it. So today we talk with Ryan about the logistics of New Zealand, like airfare, rental car cost, bringing a gun into the country, some of the challenges with all of that, stuff like that. So I think you'll enjoy it. Send us questions if you have them. Go to briancall.com, go to the contact us page. We'll answer your questions, or leave a comment below on the YouTube video of this podcast or the film, either one. And we'll start fielding the questions that people are leaving in the comment section or in our emails on the next few episodes. We'll start reading those questions and kind of answering them through the show. Do us a favor and sign up for the newsletter if you want to know about what movies we're putting out and what content we're putting out. It's at briancall.com, and use the code GRITTY at Mountain Ops to save some money, and use the code GRITTY at Sissy Sticks if you want some cool trekking poles. We've been using those poles for a while, and we're really digging those, so check those out. I think that's about it, Brent.
And if you want, you can get a hat and a t-shirt at briancall.com.
There's that too. So go do that. We appreciate, as always, stay gritty. The total cost was about $1,800 round trip for the flight to New Zealand.
Right.
And I've heard a lot of folks say you can get that flight for less. Some pay a little more. You know, if you get the timing right in your shopping, you can get it for a little less.
You book well ahead in advance and all that. Yeah. I think mine was that?
Yours was a little less.
Mine was like 1,400 or something like that coming out of Bozeman.
Yep.
So, yep.
And then the thing with New Zealand Air, and it's pretty much your only option getting there. You've got to pay, at least at some point, you got to switch over to New Zealand Air. At some point, and you got to pay for luggage fees.
Baggage fees,
which are not part of the airfare.
Right.
And basically, you get one checked bag and one like carry-on, right?
Yep.
They're very, very particular about the carry-on. It's got to be, 7 pounds or something?
7 kilos. So, what is that? Yeah, it was...
light.
15-ish pounds. I think it was.
And they actually checked on us.
They did. They put everything on a scale, and they were very, very particular about that.
And they wanted to charge like $200 for that 7-pound bag if it was overweight, and check it as another bag.
For sure.
And the fee was about $200 for each extra bag you bring.
Right. Yeah, and one of the things, like I was warned several times by several folks that you really got to watch once you get to New Zealand Air New Zealand, whatever it is, because they do kind of like push the limit on what they can charge for those bags, those extra bags. And what I was told was argue a little bit, question them on it. And it worked. It's like, okay, well, you just say, well, I didn't pay that much for going down here. And you just kind of, work it a little bit and stand there and hem and haw. And sure enough, you can get that
Ryan
price.
Doesn't really have to put on a show. It's physically painful for him to spend money. So
It is. It hurts a lot. And they see that in my face.
They take pity.
So it worked. Yeah. They will ding you on baggage once you hit New Zealand Air for sure. So that's going to be a steep price.
But the flight overall, wasn't too bad. We had a couple layovers here and there, and then you get there, we land, and we rent a car.
Yep.
And the car rental for 2 weeks was $1,200. Was it $1,200? Right? I want to say 1,000.
I think, yeah.
500 a week?
Some about around 1,000, I think is what it was.
1,000. So, and we have the receipts, and I'm putting it into the videos we're putting out. But it was a decent rig, and it was $500 a week. You split that with 2 guys, and it's $500 a piece for 2 weeks.
Right. Well, fortunately, we didn't go with the RAV4 because they tried putting us in a RAV4, and that wasn't going to happen with 3 guys and all our baggage.
Yeah, especially when you got a camera guy, and
oh, geez,
I'm bringing my cameras plus multiple weapons. It just seems like I was hauling the garage with me, you know.
We would have had so much stuff strapped to the top of that thing.
We had a pretty big rig for that. Yeah. And then you could get a 4x4 rig. There's a couple places you can go to a 4x4 specialist with snorkels and things like that, or you could rent something for more.
And that's something that I meant to look into, the snorkel rigs, the cost of that.
Yeah, because we just went to like a Hertz or something.
Yeah, we did. And, you know, there's 2 ways of getting in. There is that option of driving through rivers, across rivers, back and forth.
Into the backcountry.
Into the backcountry. Most people advise taking 2 rigs in case one breaks down.
Right.
And that's got to be pretty expensive. I mean, as fun as that little adventure sounds, driving through rivers, the problem is there's a lot of, like, what ifs that happen. First off, you're going to lose days driving up riverbeds. It is a long distance, and then also just the fear of breaking down. And
time of year has something to do with it. So as we were booking, making our plans, not really, you know, booking our airlines, making our plans, our timing was pretty late in the season. We knew, man, we were going to be hitting New Zealand's winter. Right. And there was going to be ample snow, and that most of those animals, we were going to have weather issues throughout the hunt, and that these tahr were going to have the super long coats, which is kind of what we were going for. We really did want to get after tahr that were deep into their winter coat.
Yeah, that was a lot of the talk that we had was how cool is it going to be to see those coats, the long, long manes that they have in the winter.
And Ryan especially likes cold, wintry hunts. I'm good with them. I like them, but Ryan really likes them.
I do.
So naturally, we went up there really late in that season, New Zealand's winter, and we talked to a lot of people. It turned out that doing a drop camp with a helicopter was going to be more economical than renting a rig and driving to the backcountry to get to the same location. Yep. Now, while we were there were some Kiwis that drove up to the very lodge we were staying in at one of the lodges we stayed at.
Well, it wasn't a lodge; hut. It was just a hut.
should say a hut.
Yeah,
a bivvy hut.
Yep.
And then some dudes from Finn.
Can you imagine that drive though, Brian?
Well, that's
you
just
saw
it.
That riverbed. I hated walking that riverbed. Driving it where there's no road.
Well, I was going to say that as I spoke to some people that have been on the ground and driven that, they said that it was very likely that we wouldn't make it.
Yeah.
You know, it's a 4-wheel drive, expert kind of level 4-wheel drive process.
That river shifts all the time. So what?
And you're talking boulders and rocks.
Oh yeah. I could see like little areas where there used to be a road.
And you got to have a snorkel because you are going window deep.
You're going back and forth across that puppy a lot. Mm-hmm. So yeah, risky.
And it takes days off of a trip. And so we started to price it. And for us to take the chopper in and get a drop camp and then to get flown out, our whole trip cost us $1,200 US.
Yep.
Which was a lot less expensive than renting.
And we get up there in 30 minutes versus a full day of driving.
Right.
So days lost with the driving in and out, for sure.
So the helicopter drop camp is actually a pretty awesome value in New Zealand.
It is. I think, when people think of a helicopter, they think of it a lot differently than they do like a drop camp from horses or a float plane for whatever reason. But that's just how it is in that country. You don't see horses bringing in camps over there. It's just not the deal. So that is their system to drop guys into remote places.
Well, it's so mountainous. You could see how those riverbeds that you walk would crush horses.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's just not that you couldn't take horses. I've seen horses taken into some places in BC that are like that. Mm-hmm. I saw Dustin Rowe when I was with him do some stuff like that, and it was hard on the horses. It was rough. Horses getting hurt, falling. I mean, it's a major endeavor, and livestock is a major process. But here's the deal:
just rock fields, constant rocks everywhere,
and straight up.
Yeah,
when you actually get into the hunting, the average cost. We were doing some research. The average cost of a drop camp in the United States or Canada ranges between. What do you think? Got any estimates?
Drop camp for U.S.
Yeah. Drops you in there with your camp and brings you out.
I'm gonna guess
base price
$1,200-ish.
Yeah,
somewhere there.
On the cheap end, I could find them for $1,200. And then they went up from there. Most of them actually were around $2,500 per person. A lot of them were in that price range, especially if you brought anything substantial. Mm-hmm. Just dropping you and your rifle and your backpack off was like $1,200. Yeah. So $2,500 to $3,000 typically for more rugged remote hunts. Like trying to get to where we went and with a chopper probably be closer to $2,000 or.
I've looked at places in the past for drop camps. I've never actually done one, and I think I have that $1,200 in my head. But think about it; it was only like 7-8 miles in, and then getting yourself dropped off with your buddy.
Way beyond that.
Yeah, there's a lot of time difference between where we were versus 7-8 miles in.
Well, and I mean, I was thinking about this, and there are places that a horse can go that a chopper just can't. Mm-hmm. It does Slot Canyon or a deep area, and then if you kill an animal like a moose or an elk, you're going to need that horse to get it out often, right? At least a lot of guys aren't in the condition to spend multiple days packing it straight up, you know. But the one thing that a chopper affords is it can land on a dime. And so we found that out in one of the slot canyons we were in, a narrow canyon we were in, where we got picked up on the last day. There wasn't much of a landing pad.
No. We were looking around like, where is he going to put this down? It was just a little patch of rocks amongst a sea of jungle. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't think you could have got horses to that spot if you tried. It's just too thick, too rocky,
too cliffed out.
I'd seen that bottom end.
There's no way you're getting horses in there.
I had trouble just getting the first couple hundred yards from the bottom up that trail myself. It was a struggle. So, and then
so logistically, New Zealand is just so mountainous that the helicopter is just that common.
Yeah,
you know, they use it for everything.
It's just their way of getting into the backcountry, period. And like you said,
it was cool.
It puts you in some of the most remote places. One of the things about New Zealand that I've always heard is, a lot of those tahr, the reason the numbers are so high in places is people just can't get there and they can't thin those numbers out. And it didn't really compute in my head. It's like, well, how backcountry hunters are pretty tough. Mm-hmm. Like they can get anywhere. And then you get there and you're like, I get it now.
Yeah.
They can't get anywhere. These things are living in some really rough country that, you're just not going to hunt them out.
Yeah.
And some of the choppers will put you pretty dang close to those and hunt huntable areas where it would take you so long to get there on foot. It's just not going to happen. And you're going to burn all your days in travel versus hunt time. So,
yeah. Well, and I've been to BC a couple of times. We hunted mountain goats up there, Bart Lancaster, and I've been up there with Dustin. And you're landing on lakes, and stuff. There weren't really any lakes where we were at, but you're only doing that hunt flying in, unless you want to spend days on horse. Mm-hmm. But anyway, we got in there and we were kind of shocked. We didn't know we were going to land where there was a hut,
a tiny hut.
It had 2 bunks.
Yeah.
And a little bit about the huts. New Zealand, their Department of Conservation, DOC, they manage over 950 huts in New Zealand. And I was doing a little research on that. 45% of them, I think, of that 950, so almost half, are basic huts. And they're called bivouac or bivvy huts. So ours was like, it'll say something bivvy, right? Yep. And Those huts are free. Anyone can use them. They don't cost any money. They basically have maybe a place to burn wood, and they have bunks, like a mattress, couple. Right. And so in this case, we had 2. We had 3 guys, 2 beds. So Luke, he's the cameraman, so of course he had to sleep on the floor.
Exactly. Well, and he's tall. He's a tall guy.
True. And the bunks,
and you're not.
The bunks were like 5'10". Exactly, because I could keep my feet flat on the wall and my head right there, and I could stretch out my whole body.
Yeah,
but Ryan,
I couldn't stretch out my whole body. Not even close. Somehow I got the top bunk where it's the angle, the roof is pitched.
The roof pitch.
Yeah, it wasn't that comfortable. I was kind of curled up in a ball.
So that was interesting. And then the other 40% or so of the huts are called standard huts. And those have generally a little more on the amenities. Maybe they have access to water, or they have a water supply. They have a real stove in them, like one you could cook on, burn on kind of thing, or a heat source or a fuel. And they have a toilet, and this one actually had a little outhouse that was kind of strapped to the ground out there.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ones we used.
Right.
So those are standard huts. There's a little blur between bivvy or standard. But if you stay in a standard hut, it's supposed to be $5 a night. If you stay, the other like 20% or so of the remaining huts out there range from like $15 a night to something like $30 to a very small list of them are elite, like $70 a night. But generally, if you're going to stay in a more equipped hut on like a trail system, usually, those are a step above those bivvies. They're not free. You're supposed to buy like tickets maybe at the DOC office.
Gotcha.
Vouchers. So you can just carry those with you, and then every night that you stay, you put them in like in a box to show that you paid. It's more or less, it seems like the honor system.
Mm-hmm.
You could put money in there too, from what I understand, but $5.
Dang, that is so cheap.
Yeah, it's wild. And
for if weather comes in.
And what was neat was we could hike, I don't know how many miles between each hut, but there were huts all over out there.
You look on the map and it's shocking how many huts there are in that country. Like they are literally in canyons that you just never expect to see anything.
Nope.
Like you don't see a sign of human whatsoever. And then there's a hut.
And in that hut, there might be lots of top ramen or curry chicken from 1974.
One of them, yeah.
Canned spam.
I think ramen was the highlight of the
one
of the huts.
We didn't pack a lot of food, and on our last night, we were thankful that one of the huts we came on actually had supplies in it. Some supplies. We'll get to that later, but the hut system is pretty neat. Mm-hmm. And then we always had our camp with us, and we ended up staying in our Seek Outside Cimarron, and we'll get into that too. So bringing a rifle to New Zealand has its challenges. And you can bring a bow, no problem. It's really easy. Just, bring it on the airline. You don't even have to lock your case. Yep. Everything's fine.
I went the easy route and let you deal with the rifle. So fortunately, you went through that whole process and got it done because it was really nice to have in that specific spot.
We had intended to pretty much just use bows on the trip, but when we landed in Mordor, we were like, change the plan here.
Yeah,
it wasn't.
Well, and somehow my bow never made it off the heli.
That's right.
It got stuck behind a seat, and then
left
we're all
on
just
the
kind of like
chopper,
pulling stuff out and getting it all laid out in the snow.
That chopper's loud. You're ducking your head, and in the chaos.
And then he takes off. It's quiet. And looking around, I'm like, there's my bow. It's not here. So and then we remembered the pilot had put it behind the back seat.
Yeah.
Never got taken off.
So we're up there, but bringing a rifle to New Zealand, it's really not. You just have to do. It's a process. You just got to go through it. Now you got to have a passport to go to New Zealand, which Ryan got like a week before.
Yeah, I procrastinated on that a
How
little
long?
bit.
How long did it take from the time you put in for it? And
I even expedited it, and it still took beyond what it should have taken.
so, if a guy's going to get his passport to go to New Zealand or to go anywhere, I guess, what's your recommendation?
Oh, geez,
Timing wise,
I would do it at least a few months in advance. You can pay the extra fee if you're not so cheap, and expedite it, and that should really take within 2 weeks. But I even did that, and because at first I didn't expedite it, and I did it like 6 weeks prior, and then it got to where it was down to 2 weeks, and then I called, checked on it, and then I said, "Well, look, we're getting really close.
let's do this."
It's critical time. I got to get that thing." So I expedited it, and it still came down to, I think, a couple days prior to the deal. So I couldn't have gotten a rifle in there if I wanted to, because I couldn't fill out the paperwork.
Yeah.
But
the paperwork, there had been a recent mass shooting in, I think it was Christchurch.
Yeah.
And then, New Zealand's been different about their gun laws, but that sort of caused another level of restriction and laws in place just before we went there. And so you have to get a permit to have your gun there. So you go to the website. I think it's the New Zealand Police website. Anyway, you've got to fill out some paperwork. And I think there's an online form now, and you're requesting a permit to have a weapon, a visitor's permit for a weapon for a period of time while you're there. So if you're a hunter and you want to go hunting, you need a visitor's permit. Now, the awkward thing about it is, in order to apply for the permit, you have to have someone in New Zealand that has a firearms license permit to sort of vouch for you and host you as the place where you're going to store your weapon when it's not.
It's almost like a broker. He's kind of like the broker on, that's the only way you're going to get that gun into the country now.
So that was difficult, because if you don't know someone in New Zealand, or you don't have an outfitter or guide or somebody that you're working with, and we were doing it all kind of do it yourself, then you're kind of screwed trying to get a weapon, trying to get a rifle there. I think, I don't know. And maybe over time we'll learn more about it. But if I originally submitted it and said, well, I'm not staying with anyone, I'm just going hunting, and then it'll be in my locked case. And they're like, no, you got to have someone in New Zealand that has a permit to have a firearm, vouch for you, and it's got to be a store. They have to have an authorized like storage location and things like that. So I was like, man. So, made some calls, and thankfully we had some friends and an individual graciously stepped up and took care of that for Ryan and I from New Zealand, and that enabled us to get the permit approved. And it was a really easy process to do it. Once you just filled out the paperwork, and you needed to show that you have a passport, that you have had a hunting license in your country of origin, that you are authorized to own a firearm in your country of origin, and where you're going to stay, and some basics. And so it's just a paperwork. You fill it out and you submit it. And that one piece is just the hard part, having someone in New Zealand kind of be your broker. And then getting it into the country, when you land at the airport, you've got to meet with a police officer.
Yep.
Right when you land. And you have to have $20 New Zealand exact change, and you're going to meet the officer, and then he's going to give you a paper permit that authorizes the weapon for the country. And your weapon, it better have the right serial number on it, and
it better
needs to
right?
match your application.
And yours didn't.
And all of that. No, it did. It did. I'll get into this, though. So it's got to have the right serial number on that application. So then they print off the permit and they give it to you, And then now you got to keep that permit with you at all times to show that you're licensed to have that weapon in the country.
Mm-hmm.
You pay them your exact change in New Zealand dollars and you're good to go. Now, there was a little bit of snafu there because when I landed, the police officer...
He just copied it down wrong, right?
He copied it down wrong. So
Just missed the number.
when he filled out the permit and he put the serial number down, he added an extra 1. So it was like CV11175, and he added an extra 1. I didn't look at it when he gave me the permit, to see that the serial numbers matched.
Sure.
So now I was walking around in the country technically with a permit that didn't have a serial number that matched. I didn't find that out till I was trying to go home. And when you check your bags back, you're saying you got to show them, okay, this is my weapon from the United States. I'm from the U.S., blah, blah, blah. Here's my passport and here's my permit. And then they look at the permit and your firearm to see if the serial numbers matched. And they're like, yo, dude, they don't match. And then I'm like, what? And then you look at my application and the numbers match. So the police officer in New Zealand
Just jotted it down.
in Auckland, basically, or it wasn't Auckland, was it? It was, I can't remember which airport. I think it was Auckland.
It was Auckland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he just put the wrong number down. Thankfully, the police officer in Queenstown was super cool, and he's like, I can obviously see what happened.
Yeah.
And I see your application. I see this. I see that. And he just messed up. No problem. And it took us like 2 hours to get that permit when we landed. And I almost missed my connecting flight. So when you land in New Zealand and you're trying to get your permit, don't expect that process to be quick. I had my $20 New Zealand ready, and I had filled out the paperwork, and that guy was like, I can't find your permit anywhere.
Yeah.
What's your name again? When? Who? I'm like, here's the email. And he read the email, and it says, an officer will meet you. You have been approved. Da, da, da. And he's like, yeah, that's it, but I don't know where it's at, and then that took an hour.
Yeah.
And then he wrote it down wrong. So anyway, the only other issue is when you leave the United States, before you leave, you need to go to the Department of Homeland Security, and you need to register your gun with some paperwork saying that it's now recognized by the United States as a United States weapon, right? So again, I had to go down there about a week or so before we left to Homeland Security, and basically they look at it, they see the serial number. They did the same thing with my rifle scope, and they do all that stuff so that when I leave New Zealand and come back into the United States, it doesn't look like it's a weapon I purchased in New Zealand and I'm trying to import into the U.S. Otherwise, they'll charge you all these import fees and tariffs and tax fees for the value of the weapon. And since the scope was like $3,000 and the rifle, was an expensive rifle, both of those things got registered with the Department of Homeland Security. So then when I went to leave New Zealand, there were no hassles. So that's another layer of paperwork that you should do in addition to getting the permit. Otherwise, they might just keep your gun. And you try to come
you don't
home.
want that.
Yeah. So anyway, that's a long...
So it's very easy to be a bow hunter and just go in.
Right.
None of that.
Very tempting to do it that way.
And but I tell you what, if you get dropped in the wrong type country, it is nice to have that rifle.
Well, in late season like that, in that kind of country, the rifle was actually fun. We had our share of difficulty and challenge.
There's plenty of challenge to go around, for sure.
Without a bow.
Almost impossible.
All right, folks. The podcast has just ended with Ryan and I. This is where Brent decided to end it.
I'm a killer. I kill things.
And Brent was just saying how he wanted me to kind of break down the costs now that the show's over, kind of in a recap, just to summarize it. Because you didn't feel like it was in there in the first place? Or?
Well, I felt like some of the numbers you were like ballparking and giving ranges.
All right. So real quick, we'll try to break this down. The airfare. The airfare was $1,800 for me, $1,400 for Ryan. The car rental was $600 a week
It's not bad.
The hotel was $150 a night, and we only stayed in the hotel so we could butcher game and boil skulls. I mean, really, we just got a hotel for the kitchenette. We had no other reason to have the hotel, and we would have just stayed outdoors and just really, because the first night we roll up, we were too cheap to get a hotel, and there was no need to have one, so we just slept on the ground outside the car.
Well, now that you've killed things.
Now we had some processing to do, so we got ourselves a kitchen. It was well worth it. It was nice to have a shower and a heater. Luke wanted it, so. And then the helicopter, like I said, was $1,200. For that was to get taken in and taken out. The other thing was the luggage, and flying your trophies back. It was basically $200 per panga, 70-pound panga, roughly. And Yeti Panga. And, so I want to say it was about $300 each for Ryan and
But how
I.
many animals was that?
5.
Animals?
6 animals. But that
if you went
chamois is
down
really
there,
small.
Went down there and just shot one big old tar.
Yeah, it'd be probably $150 to $200 to bring it back. Yeah. Or less. I mean, your bag, you're going to have an extra bag no matter what, regardless what it weighs.
Yeah.
But you can fit a boned out tar, the hide, into one panga and fly that home. The whole thing, all the boned out meat and the hide, and fly it home, and it'll be $150 to $200 for the bag.
It's way better than customs.
It was like nearly $2,000 for me to bring it home through the taxidermy process last time I went.
Yeah.
So you're talking $200 or $1,500 to $2,000. It has a lot of brokerage fees and things like that, and paperwork, and so it was nice just to do it in the hotel and then bring it home. So you split that with a buddy, your car rental, your hotel. We did the whole drive to a spot and walk in. There is no need to do the helicopter thing.
The helicopter was just to get to some really sick country.
It was during that time of year. I wouldn't hesitate really at certain points to just rent a 4x4 and drive in,
which some people did do.
Mm-hmm. So there's lots of options on how you break it down. It's up to you. But if you had a buddy, you stayed at a hotel a couple of nights, you did a drive in, walk in, you paid for your airfare. You're under, you're 2,500 depending on what you paid for some of this stuff, 2,500 to 3,000, and it's a trip of a lifetime. So, Brent, any other questions? I mean, you could go and buy a possum jacket or something there.
Here's
too.
the thing about New Zealand: you can pretty much kill anything there that you want. Like, it's not limited to tar and stag.
Anything with fur is invasive, so there's pretty much no protection.
Yeah, mammals.
But you can't be killing birds, dude.
Well, no, not birds. Which, by the way, that Kia you guys saw up on the mountain, those Kias, those were
that's
cool.
crazy. It's like a alpine mountain parrot.
It's the world's only alpine parrot.
Is it the only?
It's the only alpine parrot in the world.
I would fact check.
You
Brent.
can check it on Wikipedia. It's there.
I'm not sure, Brent. I've learned, being his brother, that you need to fact check some of these things.
Huh? You can check it, folks. The world's only alpine parrot, the Kia. It's KEA.
But it is a very cool bird, and it was like robbing us. It was like coming into camp, and you better have your stuff tied down, or they're going to grab it and fly off.
They're considered one of the smartest parrots in the world. They've been observed making and using tools.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
See, fact check this, folks. Fact check it. But we had a good time.
Yeah,
there.
Go to New Zealand and waylace the countryside, as long as it has fur.
But I forgot what I was saying about that. Hunting. But Ryan bought a bunch of possum fur, wolf, possum fur jackets.
Why didn't he just shoot those
stuff.
possums? Folks, they have an Australian possum that they imported to New Zealand.
The common brush-tail possum is in New Zealand.
And when we say possum, it's not a possum. It's cute. It's not like your southern hillbilly possum. Like, it's like super cute. You want this thing as a pet.
They live a lot longer than our possums do.
Huh.
Our possums, for their size and stuff like that, they live like 2 years or something.
Our possums look like they've gone through radiation.
We have ugly possums. They have pretty possums.
It's super
It's
cute.
like a chinchilla with a longer tail, but still prehensile. The tail's still prehensile.
Yeah, but still, the word possum it's not going to bring the right image to your mind.
They have some big eyes, though, man.
They remind me of sugar gliders or some kind of squirrel.
Yeah, true. Anyway,
Ryan bought a bunch of furs?
Ryan and Luke, so you can buy yourself some Kiwi souvenirs too. So this budget is just what I described. You know, your hotel, whatever else you spend, that's up to you in New Zealand.
Ryan is such a penny pincher. I have a hard time believing he bought furs.
Socks. That's what he bought. Possum socks. That's what it was. Now I remember. Possum
well, that's
socks.
cool. I would have bought possum socks.
Possum socks, and I think he bought a possum hat too.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast, folks.
That's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Stay gritty.